AM 1160 and WCCSradio.com on your Friday morning. And we're glad you're with us here today. AccuWeather, let's see what they have to say to us today. AccuWeather says today will be a partly sunny day. We're on the way to 61. That's actually where we started out, 61. It's 59 right now. Bob Pollock is with us this morning, Penn State Extension, joining us in our studio, as always, on a Friday, with one exception, and that was last week when we did Turkey-thon. But here you are, back with us. Good to have you.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Conversation presented by Marcus and Mack, voted best law firm and best personal injury lawyer 3 years in a row on the Best of Indiana County contest. To visit them online, marcusandmack.com. So here we are. It is the beginning of November, and there are some things we can do now that probably at the beginning of October we couldn't do outdoors because we were still in what was then the growing season. That's coming to a pretty rapid end, hasn't it?
Yeah, looks like things are changing a little bit here, a little cooler. There was hardly enough rain to settle the dust last night.
Yeah, there was supposed to be a little bit more substantial rain overnight, but we didn't get that.
We're still in that dry spell. It is very dry. And that would be a good reminder that if you've planted plants this growing season, even this spring, from this spring all throughout, check those. Because the ground is dry. I was planting a few plants the other day, and it was down in that soil. There was hardly any moisture. Now, granted, it was underneath the drip line of a tree.
Yeah.
But still, I was going down.
So how deep were you?
I was down 8 to 10 inches. The whole depth of a shovel.
Yeah.
And it was dry the whole way down. Mm-hmm. So if you've planted plants, it's good to check them because as you take them out of, whether you had them ball and burlapped or you had them in a container and you planted those, even in the spring, those have to grow new roots. And in that planting process, you may have also disturbed those roots, and sometimes we do that purposely, especially in a containerized pot that might have had roots growing around. They were pot bound essentially.
Yeah.
But roots growing around the inside of that container, we would have trimmed those off to stop that process from circling all the time when we planted. So those have to grow new roots, and then those roots have to get out into that existing soil that was there past where we dug that hole.
Which probably last spring they did, or they
hopefully
started.
Yes, hopefully that's the case. And that helps them. That helps them get established. And also, as those roots grow out into that existing soil, then they're going to be more stable. They're going to be more able to get water and nutrients, and able to grow. But still, as dry as it's been, sometimes we can dig that hole, plant that plant, and it essentially acts like another pot. It's like we repotted it.
Yeah.
And especially if that soil gets dry or has more clay content, then that can happen.
So when you say check them, what does that mean?
If you've mulched them, pull back that mulch. How dry is the mulch? And then is there moisture underneath in the soil? So you got to do, if you've got a rake or some hand tools that you can scratch that ground with, or even take a shovel and pull the mulch aside and dig a little bit.
Okay.
Is there moisture in that soil? Maybe there is in the top inch or two, but you dig down past that and it's not. So just, if that's the case, if it's dry, you may want to water those plants. Slowly. Don't just dump a bucket of water on there because it might just, like on a duck's back, roll off and disappear. But just slowly, almost trickle water that. If you can. Now, granted, there are concerns about water restrictions and that sort of thing. But if you're able to do that, if you have a water source, whether it's a spring or a cistern or the ability to do that, it would be good to do that this fall to get those plants rehydrated going into, as they slow down and transition from the growing season to prep themselves for dealing with the effects of the dormant season in winter. Please do that.
All right.
It's
there
still,
you go.
it's still a good time to plant some things. If you need to move plants, you had an original concept. You thought, oh, this will look good here. This will look good there. You plant those plants, and then you find that after a year or two, maybe even 5 years, that plant outgrew that spot, or
It's crowding something
it's
else.
crowding. Yes, things grow together. I maybe planted them too close together, and we need to move them. And of course, we have perennials and plants that we need to separate or dig occasionally to, if they've outgrown their space. You have grasses, so
Yeah.
and those are a good example of where they'll get that donut hole in the middle
Yeah.
because they've grown, and so that original plant that was there, it's grown out from that, and it's kind of gotten suffocated in the middle, and it gets too dense and tight. And so when grasses get like that, then we can go in and dig them up, cut them up, and then move them, separate them. You've actually propagated plants, started with one, and now you might
Yeah.
have 5 or 6.
Yeah. Well, in my case, down there by the burn barrel, I've got the wooden screen around the burn barrel, but then I planted the wild grasses, the tall grasses in front of it to sort of screen that off a little bit more. And there are 2 of one type that I consider to be the prettier type, and then there's one that's very nice, but it's not the same as those other 2. So if I wanted to move that one, I could move it over to the other side.
Right.
But if I cut that out of there and just shovel that one out, I'm also going to be around the root system of the 2 that are beside it. So when you're taking out a plant that is crowding another plant, how concerned do you have to be with damaging the root structure of the one that stays behind?
Yeah, and you can be. In different plants will react differently to that, but grasses are pretty tough. That if you damage a little bit of the edge of the roots that are there, those plants are still pretty intact. They've got maybe 80% of that root system that's untouched, and you just touched 20% of it, maybe.
And they have a good seed structure too. I mean, they're seeding like crazy.
So in that case, you're not going to cause any harm there.
Okay.
Some other woody plants, shrubbery and things like that, that might be more of an issue if we damage those plants' root systems.
I'm thinking of azaleas. Is that the one I'm thinking of?
Could be, yeah, azaleas.
Yeah. I've got white ones and I've got pink ones, and the white ones are crowded out by the air conditioning unit sitting to the left of them, which came in long after they were there, and then another plant to the right, which has expanded. So it's crowded out, and it's looking pretty scrawny in there. It gets nice flowers, but then the plant itself isn't really healthy looking, so I could move that one.
Yeah, you could, yeah. And usually with those azaleas or rhododendron and shrubs like that, we want to try to get, you don't have to dig all the way out to the size of the plant. The smaller the plant, the more the root system you can get and take more soil with that. Because we get to a point where this gets to be, we need equipment we can't just pick this thing up out of the ground and lift it because of the weight of the soil ball. So that influences that. But you usually don't have to dig out as far as the drip line of that plant. You can go inside of that. And as you dig that plant, you might find that the root system isn't as developed as you might thought it have been. So you might be able to take a little smaller root ball to be able to lift that plant and move it. But you won't know that till you start.
It'll regenerate, though?
Digging. Yes, it'll. Yep.
Yeah, give it a new, fresh chance in a nice.
We're still trying
nice
to,
area.
On all ball and burlap plants, plants that are grown in a nursery in the ground, when they go in and dig them, they're removing roots. And each plant will vary a little bit. They don't all have the same exact root system. They're not all growing in the same exact soil conditions. And so one plant might have a bigger, denser root system than the plant right next to it. So you do get variability in those B&B plants.
One other question I wanted to ask you before we're done here today, because this week I'm good at it. Tomorrow I'll be out taking out the zinnias. The frost has gotten to them, which is what we want to happen. And so now I've got the seed balls in the middle of those zinnias. And I love to save those seed balls, and I replant them in the spring just by spreading out those seed balls. They make so many seeds that I've got seeds from 5-6 years ago that I'm still scattering out there, but I've got all these extra seeds. So I want to keep the fresher ones, right? The younger ones, if you
Right.
will.
Yeah, and if you have enough, you can actually rotate out. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure how long those seeds last. You know, some seeds will last decades, and other seeds are only, you know, their germination percentage will go down, you know, within a year. You know, they might drop 20, 30, 40%.
But a seed that has been generated from a previously regenerated seed, and because it's younger, it has a better chance of propagating again, right?
Possibly. Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
All right. They're pretty zinnias.
Hey,
They are.
obviously, that's worked. You've been able to save those.
Yeah.
And,
what about marigolds? Because we planted marigolds in the vegetable garden this year. We read that was something that would actually work, and it seemed to have. It helped the other plants too, just in terms of keeping critters away.
Yeah,
because they don't like the smell.
More of a
but do you
repellency.
save marigold seeds in the same way?
You could, yes.
Okay.
Yep, you can save those seeds.
All right. Well, they have to come out too. All right. So they'll get ripped out this weekend too. All right, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
It is the voice of Indiana County. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and WCCSradio.com. We're just about 2 minutes away from the top of the hour. Fox News comes your way then, and then Josh Whittison in the WCCS newsroom. It's Indiana in the Morning on WCCS.